Welcome to session 2 of Toddler Talks. In this session, we're going to build on what we did in our last and tackle the question, how do we engage our community? I hope you find it helpful. Do you know, one of the things we need to do as we think about going deep in our relationships is we need to recognize that as we seek to do so, that whilst a general parent and toddler group might be the norm, it is possible to either create or branch out into specialist groups. In this way, we can engage with a wider audience and connect with more people. So let me take a moment to show you what that actually looks like and what some of the ideas might be if you wanted to begin to establish a specialist toddler group. What we're talking about is expanding our horizons, looking at things in a different way and being able to expand our thinking where toddler group is concerned. So here are some ideas that you might like to consider. First is a first child group. Do you know, one of the things that's really difficult for parents when they come into parenting for the first time is that they don't know anything. It doesn't matter how many books they've read. It doesn't matter how many people they've spoken to. For the first time, their inexperience can often show, and they can find it really tough and really struggle. And in those contexts, it's quite useful to be able to get together with your peers, those who are in the same boat, with others who've been there before you, who can input encouragement, input information, and help them because they know they've been there before. And a first child group can be incredibly helpful. And because it's just made up of those who are in the same situation, not just sort of a spread of general parents, then actually it gives time to be able to do things in a different way. So that's one that's really worth considering and engages with your community in a very different way. And then, of course, there's mother and baby groups. You know, those groups that actually just are about the small children, the little ones, you know, those who are in the first year of life and have not started talking and walking and getting up to mischief. In the church I serve, we have a general group and we have a mums and babies group, and it just so happens that they meet at the same time. And we're looking to develop that so that actually we put input into the baby group and input into the toddler group that is very different, and then connect them together in a way that actually means that we're investing in both parties and recognizing that they're in very different situations and circumstance. And then, of course, another idea is a carer nanny group. One of the things I've found as I've talked to parent and toddler group leaders is that they get really frustrated with professional carers who often bring in 3 or 4 kids, don't seem to want to engage with the parents, and find they can often be seen as a nuisance, as a hindrance. And that seems to me to be a real shame. You know, if you're in an area where carers, nannies is the norm, then actually why not devote yourself to creating a forum, a place where they can actually meet and get together and teach one another. I remember being in an event in Surrey on one occasion, and a lady came up to me. She was the leader of a toddler group, and she said, "It's so frustrating. We keep trying to engage with the parents. We keep trying to build relationship, but they don't come to the group. They send their nannies, and they live in these gated communities, and we can't reach them, and we've tried all sorts of things. And can you give me some advice as to how we can reach the parents?" And I said to her, "Have you ever thought that God may not be calling you to reach the parents? Have you ever thought that actually your ministry might be to nannies, to carers?" And you know, it was like a light bulb moment for her. Suddenly she went, "You know, that's incredible. I've never thought about that. I've always seen them as an inconvenience, not as maybe a mission field and a ministry opportunity." And maybe that will destroy some of your stereotypes as you think that through. And then, of course, there's twins groups. They are hugely popular. And if you're living in an area where there are a number of twins and people, you know, for some bizarre reason, they tend to sort of gather together. And then it's a very particular form of parenting. It's a very particular situation and very particular stresses and strains. So that might be something worth considering. And then there are those parents with disabled children. You know, there's a real opportunity to engage with people who are finding things really tough. Parenting, particularly in that first phase, is really tough as it is. But to have the added complexity of either being a disabled parent yourself or bringing into the world a child with disability can be really tough. And to be able to create a specialist group where that can be the case. Another church that I visited started a group for children with Asperger's and autism. And the woman who was going to lead it stood up in her church one Sunday morning. She described what she was going to do. And she said, I don't know whether there's anybody out there that would find it helpful. She was a lady whose child was living with autism. And that was the only thing she did by way of marketing, the only thing she did by way of publicity. And the following week, on her first session, 40 turned up. 40. People heard about it through their health visitor. They'd heard about it through church members who'd phoned up and said, hey, you might be interested in this. And one particular couple drove for 45 minutes to get there. Such was the need and the opportunity. What an incredible thing to do. Now, you could do the same thing with Down syndrome or ADHD or anything really, but it provides a platform, it provides an opportunity. And then lastly, you could actually have a sort of breakaway group that is about preparing children for nursery and for school. As they're coming to the top end of your toddler group and proving to be just that little bit more awkward, just that little bit more difficult in a general group, you might actually think, well, let's hive them off and let's establish a group that really helps them and begins to promote nursery and parent and school for them in that situation. The moment we begin to think out of the box, what you're effectively doing is beginning to think wider. If our first session was about going deeper and deepening the relationships, then in this session, I want us to think about how do we broaden our horizons and think in a different way. So in this session, I want to change the paradigm. So far, we've discussed how we develop our group. We've used the group as a hub for growth and for change. In this session, I want to ask, what would happen if we changed the goal? Just to get us to think in a different way. Let's say our aim was to reach out and build a relationship with every family with a child under 3 in our town, our area, our community. What might that look like? What ideas could you come up with? So let's just pause for a moment and let's give that some thought. And so why don't you in your group chat about that? It may seem hypothetical to you, but it will spark ideas, and that's the whole point. So here's your chance to pause. Have a chat amongst yourselves, and then we'll try to amass our ideas. Use your little step circle to try to do it logically, and put yourself in the place of the people you're seeking to engage with. Imagine your town, your context, your community. What are the needs likely to be? How would we find out? What would we need to do to engage them? How would we need to plan to see this goal reached? Take a few moments, think it through. Okay, so how did you do? Did you come up with some ideas? Did you manage to fill the circle with your ideas as to how we might tackle that if that were our vision and that were our goal? You may think it's irrelevant to you, but actually it's getting you to think out of the box. It's getting you to think about new ways that may not be relevant to you right now, but may be in 3 to 5 years' time. And similarly, if you'd like to share them with me, they're just the sorts of things that may inform others and encourage others to think of new ideas. So let me encourage you to do that by popping it in the email that you'll see on the PowerPoint, on each PowerPoint. So here's my attempt. You didn't think I was going to let you do it by yourself, did you? If I was going to go wide, what I've done is I've lumped together every idea I've heard or seen over these past few years, and with a view to cherry picking. You can cherry pick any of them that are useful to you, and some of them you'll recognize because we've already talked about them. So if we were seeking to engage with every family with a child under 3 in our local community, what would it look like? So there we go. There's the whole list. In fact, actually, let me expand it for you so you can actually see it and not my happy smiling face. Maybe we'd engage with the health visitors and ask them, how do we How can we meet the needs? What are the needs of those in our community with children under the age of 3? Maybe we start a baby and toddler in the park, come one, come all. Maybe we do a new dad's group or a teddy bear's picnic, or connect with antenatal classes and have them come into our group, so that people pass through. You could actually create a toddler group that is connected to an antenatal clinic where the parents come in, they start the fun and they do the toddler group thing. And whilst they're doing that, they get peeled off and they actually do all the stuff that you would normally do when you have to go to clinic with your child. Perhaps you create some top tip sheets that you can disseminate out to parents, first parents or parents with twins or whatever. You could develop those. Maybe you could contact social services and see whether you could help them with their most needy families and their most needy situations. Perhaps you'd like to do something in terms of well-being. That's a huge topic these days, isn't there? Or there's baby signing, where you teach your baby to communicate without words before they can speak, which is hugely significant these days. Maybe you do a group for their starting school, or you develop a new home pack for those moving into your area that gives them all sorts of advice and all sorts of pointers as to where they can go to the doctors or the library or the health centre or whatever it might be, and communicate that your group exists. Baby massage, baby gym. I mean, the list is endless, isn't it? As to ways that you might potentially be able to develop a connection with those in your community with children under the age of 3. Now, having said that, this might need a greater degree of partnership. You can't do all of this by yourself. You'd have to be a massive church and be massively committed to toddler groups to be able to do everything. But you could work with others in your neighborhood. You might have to start outside of the building. And it may require multiple groups, or it may mean leaving what you do now to follow a new calling. But the reality is that there are loads of ways that you can connect with and develop from this core thing about parent and toddler groups. The plain and simple truth is that you could build a whole life's work around this one area of life. You could develop a church around this one starting point. And what's true for you is also true for other areas of the life of your church, for youth or elderly, using these same little steps and vision principles. Do you know, recently I was visiting another church, and just across from the road from them was a coffee shop. Not unusual, you would think, but this coffee shop was designed with babies in mind. It was effectively a soft play baby nursery area with a coffee shop, or a coffee shop with. And I thought that was really interesting and a really novel way of starting a business and connecting with early years parents, and worth giving some consideration to. Of course, that's not the only way that you can go wide where relationship is concerned. We could also think about how we build on extended family. How do we go from those that we've got who come into our session, and how do we expand out to include those that they are related to? So we could think about the extended family, and increasingly we have to capitalize on the relationships we already have and allow them to lead us into the ones we don't. So for example, one church had a mechanic in the congregation. So in order to engage men, that's what they thought, they brought an old banger onto the site and invited the youth club to invite their parents to come and help restore it so that it would be given away to a single mum in the community, not from the church, in the community who might need it. And that enabled the parents, particularly fathers, to come and do something that they were actually interested in, that enabled them to teach their kids, their teenagers particularly, something that they had learnt themselves. The teenagers got to bond with their fathers and their parents a little bit more, and also to learn a new life skill. And that was a mechanic. What an incredible thing to do. Another church did Who Let the Dads Out as a way to reach men as dads. Another example is a church that actually started a thing called Jobs in July, where they found the needs in their local community, and they resourced the dads, not just the dads in the church, but the dads in the toddler group, to go out and help to meet those needs. It's all about building relationship. So how do we engage with the spouses? How do we engage with the grandparents? How do we engage with the neighbours of those who are in our toddler group? Because you can do all sorts of things. How do we engage with carers who come to our group and carers who know carers? How do we engage with their friends? Of course, often people will come to Toddler Group and they'll bring their friend along, and they may not even have kids, but it's a great opportunity to begin to connect with and engage with. And then, of course, there's the siblings of the children and the siblings sometimes of the parents. And anything that you are able to do that deepens the relationship extends the influence of your group. And so give that some thought. This is a brief session. It's an opportunity to reflect wider and think about community engagement more. How can you develop the ministry and the mission of your group beyond your session in order that it might truly meet the needs of both parents and those that they know, and the children and those that they know? Take some time, think about that. And thanks for being here for session 2.